Hi everyone. Welcome to the third edition of our marketing conference, Marketing Refocus 2023. As marketers, we are constantly adapting to a world that's always on the move. That's why we have brought together some of the best and brightest marketing minds in the industry to discuss all things marketing in this virtual conference. But wait, I'm not alone on the stage. This year, I have two amazing co hosts as well. I am delighted to welcome Rhea Jaspal and Sana Sachdeva to this virtual stage. Hi, Rhea and Sana. So glad that you're here.
Thank you so much, Monali. I'm so glad to be hosting this event today.
Thanks a lot, Monali. I'm really happy to be here today.
All right. During this year, we have seen many businesses face several challenges due to constantly changing economic conditions. And it goes without saying, but a business can't thrive if you're not adapting to the changing marketing world. At some point in their journey, every business owner is likely to face challenging circumstances that would need them to shift into survival mode. And that's where the true opportunities lie. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going, right? Well, the current dynamic economic landscape is one of those opportunities. What do you think, Rhea and Sana?
Without a doubt, sure. I completely agree with you, Monali. Also, as you very rightly mentioned, I feel this is the perfect time for brands to invest in long term growth strategies, isn't it? And now is the time that brands start looking a forward looking approach and invest in new product lines or maybe strategic partnerships, which will eventually help and position themselves for sustainable success. What do you have to say about this, Rhea?
I completely agree with you there, Sana. So, I believe as a modern marketer, the changing economic landscape presents an opportunity to number one, rethink our marketing presence and resources. Number two, reconfigure our marketing talent and strategies. And number three, readapt to the ever evolving marketing needs. So let us all gear up for we are just about to start. And before we move forward, I just like to tell you a few things that can be kept in mind. All attendees will be in listen mode only. If you'd have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box in the window on the right of the main screen. We'll bring them up towards the end of the discussion, definitely. And just in the unlikely event of a network issue, or if we get disconnected or hit a technical snag, please be patient with us. We'll be back in less than a minute.
Thank you, Rhea. As she rightly mentioned, I think these 3 hours will be the mantra to ensure that your business is resilient and future proof in 2023 and beyond. And that's what we are going to talk about in the next few hours, making marketing matter. Rethink, reconfigure, readapt. I'd like to thank you all for taking out time and being with us here today. We have a power packed agenda in store for the next few hours. Well, now I'm excited to let you know that we have exciting keynotes, panel discussions, Q&As, and many networking opportunities lined up for you today. Starting with a welcome note by Subendu Patnaik, Principal Analyst at Forrester, with over 19 plus years of experience in business strategy, sales, and marketing. He is a seasoned expert in building and nurturing high performance marketing teams that deliver tangible results and drive growth. So, here's Subendu speaking on making marketing matter, rethink, reconfigure, readapt. Over to you,
Hi.
Subendu.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining in today's session on making marketing matter, rethink, reconfigure, and readapt. After 2 very difficult years post-COVID, we have finally stepped into 2023. But do we really know what awaits us in 2023? It's hard to predict the economic picture. There is a lot going on right now. We are looking at businesses being concerned about high inflation around the world. There are divided opinions, of course, related to the recession which is playing around. So there are some people who believe that recession is coming. There are some who believe that recession isn't. And geopolitical tensions in many different parts of the country are, creating all of these uncertainties in the global macroeconomic landscapes. Now, this is on top of things which we are already experiencing. What are they? They are changing or evolving buyer behaviors. Buyers have very different expectations. The evolution of work models, the way work is shaping up, the emergence of new technologies, right? And there are concerns related to privacy, there are risks coming up, and so much so. And in short, if we really summarize all of this, what is happening around us, we can say that we are surrounded by a sea of change. And you, as the key marketing leaders, as the CMOs, need to be the compass in this sea of change and to drive your organization, guide your organization to sail through this unknown and unpredictable environment. And it's not easy. It's definitely challenging to be a driver of growth when things are unpredictable. And, keeping in mind the long-term growth of the organization. But often we have seen that organizations demonstrate short-termism. Now, what is that? Prolonged unpredictability of the global economy will drive short-termism. This will expose marketing executives to unprecedented scrutiny on their budgets and the kind of justifications they will have to give to defend their budgets. So what should marketing leaders, B2B marketing leaders and CMOs do? They must analyze. They must analyze the way they operate to maximize the value creation for their organization and in order to stay relevant. Marketing leaders who are, bold enough to innovate their way of working will be rewarded with results. Transformation any day is hard. There is no doubt about it. We have all known that, it takes a lot of efforts to change the organization from within. And it is effort intensive, right? But it must be done. There are many, many things that you can do. So how do you as CMOs and heads of marketing really understand or prioritize what are the key things which are worth focusing on? So in this discussion, we will talk about 4 key things. And I do not claim to give you all the solutions which you are looking for, but I will prioritize non-negotiable things for you. We will talk about what the leading B2B organizations are doing today. How are they driving growth with leading edge marketing approaches? We will touch upon some key areas which you can then think and strategize and plan for the coming years. So what are those areas? They are customer engagement. How do you rethink your customer engagement strategy? How do you recognize what kind of buyer behaviors are changing in your buying groups? How do you reconfigure your demand programs? How do you readapt to deliver greater business value and build a high performance organization? Before we get into the actual presentation, I wanted to give you this snapshot. These are CMO priorities heading into 2023. So we at Forrester, we surveyed over 1,000 plus B2B marketing leaders globally, just to understand what are their key marketing priorities. It is very clear from this slide or from this data which you see in front of you that they absolutely have a lot on their minds across a range of marketing disciplines, I must say. Understanding the buyers and their changing needs, comes at the second. You can also see brand and purpose reconsiderations. There are marketing ROI related questions, priorities which marketers are picking up, operational efficiency related queries, and supporting the end-to-end customer lifecycle. That's also something which is increasingly becoming a priority for the marketing leaders. So where should CMOs focus for 2023? Where should you focus? Where should you invest your time? Where should you not invest? Or where should you divest? And what must you, try your hands out on, and what must you experiment? And we found that the most successful B2B marketing organizations and their marketing leaders are rethinking how they should engage with their existing customers. That brings us to the first point which we wanted to cover, rethinking customer engagement. Now, the leading B2B marketing teams are, they understand that there is a lot of unpredictability in the business ecosystem. And B2B organizations today are looking to grow in places they know really well and they understand really well. As a result, you can say that B2B growth strategies have started tilting heavily towards retention, cross-sell, and upsell opportunities. Now, this needs not only a great service or a great product, but you also need very strong customer relationships. And to increase this customer loyalty, to protect revenues, marketing leaders are getting serious about the health of the relationships which they have with their customers. But setting up a customer experience function only, do you think that will solve this problem? I will give you an illustration. You can go through that quickly to understand if that is right or not. This I picked up from Marketunist. Tom Fishburne, he runs this agency where he presented this. You see that customer experience is not just the responsibility of the customer service team. Winning organizations are going back to the drawing board, refocusing their strategies and operations around the customer. Now, so think about this. To protect and better the customer engagement, CMOs have to prioritize their focus to drive really comprehensive, concerted initiatives around the customer, because customer-led growth will demand delivering better customer experiences. Let's look at this. In Forrester's Priority Survey 2022, we asked almost 900 plus business technology professionals about how important is improving the experience for their customers. Now, improving experience for their customers and growing revenues came out to be the top most high priority objectives for the business for the next 12 months. Now, however, for this to succeed, for this customer focus to really succeed in an industry which has long prioritized winning net new businesses, celebrated winning net new businesses, and now to reimagine how it creates value for customers across the entire life cycle, it's going to need a lot of rethink. Now, pivoting to a customer-led growth mindset, it'll demand, changing a lot of things. But most importantly, architecting a great customer experience, you have to move away from an org-first mindset. This is our brochures. This is what we do. This is from that kind of a mindset, you have to move to what buyers and customers need. And how can you solve their problem? What is the value you are delivering to the customer with that particular collateral, with that particular message? And this cannot be done by marketing alone. It has to be done with marketing and CX. These two functions have to come together and deliver this impeccable customer experience. Let's look at this. Forrester's global marketing surveys, we do marketing surveys every year. And so when we looked at the data from 21 and 22, you could see that these trends are already getting highlighted. More and more organizations are setting up dedicated CX teams. And they are not stopping there. They are observing the customer journeys. They are letting that information sharpen the customer profiles. And they are shaping, the overall marketing strategy. Now, this alignment is critical between different functions within the organization to create a really consistent, coherent experience. Unless you do that, it'll appear like a very siloed and disconnected messaging. And of course, it'll translate into a disconnected experience for the customer. And customer will not feel really good about it. So marketing is stepping up to define and establish some of these shared KPIs. What should be my KPI? What should be the KPIs for the CX team? And then they are jointly worked upon by not just marketing and CX, but also the global and regional teams. And sometimes even sales does come into picture as well. Now, additionally, customer success teams will also need to effectively scale and increase the reach of their engagement programs. And thanks to content and messaging, which is specifically designed now for customer enrichment programs, some of that will definitely help in building a better customer experience. This is Forrester's post-sale customer lifecycle framework. Now, what this essentially helps is, it helps sales and marketing leaders to identify different stages in the post-sale customer journey. Now, whenever a customer is signed, and then you engage with the customer, there are multiple different stages. So there are 4 phases, in fact, in the customer lifecycle after a customer has got onboarded. The company is responsible for delivering, which is this phase 1, developing and retaining and growing the customer. These are the 4 stages. Now, the corresponding customer experience is what? It is initiate, participate, actualize, and advocate. Now, in the interest of time, let me talk about one of the phases. Let's say the retain stage, right? In the retain stage, what happens? The companies must have already delivered by this time what was promised to the customer. Marketing and sales now would have a time frame using which they are trying to secure renewals. They should bring in new business and must be prepared to candidly assess the situation of what is the actual customer relationship looking like and what are the customer expectations, right? Sales and marketing, they have to ramp up, or they normally ramp up their operations, their engagement with the customer in this phase. And as these groups look to deliver the right message at the right time, especially if there are competitors which are involved at this stage, that can become a threat to the existing customer relationship. So marketing and sales do come in at this stage. Now, so when you start looking at every stage and the kind of things which you can do, the corresponding stage for customer experience will then become the actualized stage, where customer contacts responsible for the renewal, they must articulate the true value, and mostly in financial terms, of course. And they will also look to other resources, such as peers, colleagues, to validate what kind of experiences the customer has had with us, and how can they assess the value of the relationship. So to summarize, let me say that these are the 4 key things which I would want to bring to your attention. Budgets, processes, and KPIs, they have to go a major change to accommodate this shift to new customer orientation. You probably are already focused on the customer, but I think a lot of processes internally has to change. You have to start measuring the CX KPIs, which are there in your CMO dashboards. And if you have not already included some of that, this is the right time to probably start looking at that direction. Align your marketing and CX teams to have shared KPIs with common objectives of customer focus. And you use data-led insights to sharpen customer profiling and targeting. You should focus on scaling the customer engagement programs to protect revenues and to increase loyalty. All right. So now coming to the second one. The first one was kind of a big one, but really an important one. And it's kind of a scene setter, if you may, for some of the other observations I'm going to make. Now, let's pivot from the customer, to knowing how our buyer behaviors have been changing and recognize their role in making our programs, the kind of programs which we are planning, to come to life in the right way. So our observation here is that leading organizations are not only, doing work to identify and profile the key buyers, but they are going one huge step further. That is enabling the other parts of the business beyond your marketing teams to leverage those insights as they carry on with their, day-to-day market-facing activity. But this is not an easy task at all, because the world keeps changing, and it has changed quite a bit. So what does our research show? Our research shows that, from the past years, overall buying behavior, starting from buying interactions during the purchase process to more number of people involved in every purchase, it continues to increase. You could see from the graphs that the numbers have increased to 27 in 2021. I'm sure that these numbers, when the data comes in, these numbers are even more. So Needless to say, this increases the buying cycle time. When you have a lot of interactions happening during the buying cycle, a lot of questions happening, and the buyers are having more and more people involved in the purchase process, that extends the buying cycle. It puts additional strain on the resources which are there with you. Now, and if buying cycle has changed, the measurement of the marketing value must change as well. And how do we do that? A focus on marketing sourcing, saying that marketing should be focused only on the sourcing, that has really failed to keep up with the change in buyer preferences over time. Now, this focus on just sourcing has to change. Top-down buying decisions have given way to increased buying complexity through very large buying groups. Now think about it this way. Our data proves that more than 80% of buying decisions are now being made through buying groups. 80% of that. Now it is no longer, the sales reps relationships only with the buyer, which closes the sales. That's absolutely, doesn't work anymore. But it truly takes a huge collective efforts across the organization, from across teams, different functions, to do so. And buyers today are expecting more transparency and openness. Now they are looking at a very fluid experience rather than a very siloed and think about inconsistent or maybe abrupt or sporadic relationships or functional handoffs. Now, what should marketing leaders then do? Marketing leaders must then design and establish key performance indicators which track such evolved needs of the buyers across the different stages of the buyer journey. Let's understand personal versus self-guided interactions by phase. The number of buyer interactions in a purchase process, right, that has increased dramatically. We saw it. Now, saw a sharp increase, across all of the number of interactions which are happening from 17 in the previous year to 27. However, the best part is that not all of these interactions need to be in-person interactions with the buyers in the buyer's journey. So there are some interactions which are self-guided interactions. And our data shows that some interactions are also self-guided where buyers are, in each of the stages, there are multiple stages. We are looking at an education stage, you are looking at a solution stage, you are looking at a selection stage. In each of these, sorry for that. So in each of these stages, you could see that almost 50%, 40-50% are interactions which are happening in a self-guided interaction manner. Now, recognizing this interaction mix is a very important point for allocating and aligning the scarce marketing resources you have at your disposal, right? It might look a lot hard, maybe, but just hold on tight. I'll show you, how attribution is changing too. First, let's look at, some kind of content assets which buyers are engaging with and when. Again, this is Forrester's 2021 Revenue Enablement Survey results, where we are looking at different assets which are requested from marketing by the sales team. You can see that there are assets being requested by the partner sales teams as well. You can see there are case studies, there is pricing, there is competitive intelligence, a lot of times FAQs. So we have tried to put all of that in a descending order of consumption. So think of this as the volume. And if you really see, it exposes one peculiar trend that buyer personas are not consumed enough in many organizations. You could see that at the bottom of the page where you have only 12 to 13% being consumed. Now, what does this mean? This means that when buyer behaviors are changing, we are not probably using buyer personas enough. We are not creating buyer personas enough, and we are not spending enough time. No wonder that when buyer insights are not taken into the marketing planning process, the impact can be adverse. So how do you create and enable a balanced B2B engagement strategy? In front of you, you have the buying interaction model. The buying interaction model at Forrester provides a means to categorize buyers' preferred interactions across a variety of types and sources. I've tried to list here the order of impact of all, on all buyers. You can see that you have orchestrate, you have influence, and all the other quadrants wherein you could see that sales conversations, product experts, executives, what is the priority of each of them in a decision-making cycle, in a buying process, right? So this is what talks about. There are detailed reports available. You could probably have a look at that. And enabling the use of buyer personas. We understood that we have to start focusing on buyer personas. We have to start building them, refine them, but we have to also enable the use of buyer personas in the, and that is the true nature of being audience centric, right? So first, this is Forrester's buyer persona deployment model, and it highlights the ways in which you can use buyer personas. You can package them, you can share them with different stakeholders within the organization, and you can also train them. You can train them to have consistent messaging for each persona, irrespective of whether which of your sub functions are interacting with them or not. You can apply them to specific activities, you can apply them to specific flows, and demonstrate the impact of using these, and increasingly embed them into the campaigns which are put together, into the processes you have. The final step of this process, the deployment process, of course, is to continue to refine these personas, because personas do change. Personas have to be observed. Probably your target market has changed. Probably the maturity level in the target market which you are reaching out to, that is different from your maturity in the previous interactions or earlier geographies, right? So you have to start looking at what kind of personas you have, how can you refine them further, and then you can bring that to measure the impact all these buyer personas are having on your messaging, and the impact it has on your overall business objective, marketing objectives, which you started off with. Moving on. I think, so we have covered ground, almost half of it. We are now going to look at how are leading B2B organizations reconfiguring how they drive demand for their organizations. And the leading B2B marketing teams are taking a significant step away from lead-based demand generation. Now, leading organizations have killed the MQL, or the marketing qualified leads. Think about it this way: they have buried the lead. Of course, it is pun intended, but they are now about marketing to buying groups, because we are seeing that it's not just an individual; it is a buying group which is taking a decision in every purchase journey. But knowing that is easy. Doing that is not as simple. But the reason is simple. You have to generate this understanding within the organization that individual leads do not work. There are 5 key accelerators which I will talk to you about, which will help you to successfully transform your approach. Let's look at this model. We believe that achieving pipeline momentum, it requires a clear focus on engaging buying groups. That's number 1. Then responding to digital signals, which are there, and optimizing the path towards a buying decision. Now, the demand and ABM practice, or the demand and ABM analysts and peers of mine, they talk about momentum accelerators model, which showcases the 5 momentum accelerators which normally demand and ABM leaders use to transform the entire buying experience for their prospects and their customers. Now, so that will not just help them, structure this process, but also accelerate their own pipeline momentum. We are going to talk briefly about, each of them. But let's first look at some supporting evidence as well. Now, we have been talking about marketing qualified leads since almost 2 decades now, and 2 decades into the era of demand marketing. The key measure of success, the end-to-end conversion ratio, starting from when the prospect enters the funnel to the time when the account is won, it sits at less than 1%. Less than 1%. That means we are off 99% of the time. 99% of the time we are off. No wonder so many others have such mixed feelings about what we are doing. in the sense what marketing is doing and what is it that they are really contributing about. So let's talk this through. If less than 1% make it to the close stage, and typically only one contact is attached to an opportunity, no wonder marketing has trouble, achieving its desired impact. The point is clear that lead or MQL is not buying alone. They are no longer buying alone. In fact, our research shows that 83%, I was talking about 80%, more than 80%, the exact number is 83% of B2B buying decisions are made by a group of 3 or more. And you can start looking at the data below. You have independent scenarios of buying, you have consensus scenarios, you have committee scenarios. We see that committee scenarios are now the most prevalent. 43% of buying decisions happen through committees. B2B buyers are most often involved in this area, and it has, independent purchases, as you can see, they have dropped, with only 18%. But this isn't new, and it should not be shocking to, any of us. We have been marketing to multiple personas, for many years, or, you can say forever. But so if we have been able to market to these multiple personas, and we know that there are multiple people involved in these, buying decisions, and sales, you can check with your sales organization, they would absolutely confirm this as well. So then why have we been passing, single files or single people files to our, to our CRM systems? Okay. Now let's look at another data point which will put things into perspective. The average B2B organization will get 77% or gets 77% of its revenue from existing customers. Now, and that's the other contrasting data point, that however, 42% marketers only are deploying the demand marketing channels for enrichment phase of the customer lifecycle, which we talked about, which means that definitely it needs to be redesigned. The process, the structure, the flow has to be redesigned, and it is definitely overdue. And if majority of our revenue comes from existing customers, we have to have a way, right, to represent marketing's contribution there. So how do we do that? Increased alignment. As you increase your alignment of demand and ABM programs, and also take in new ideas and drive new technological capabilities, you have to start looking at new ways of visualizing and managing marketing's contribution to each of these levers. We will start looking at a B2B revenue waterfall. What's a B2B revenue waterfall? It's a very simplistic slide. Probably all marketers, we have known this, we have seen this, but this is slightly different. We have, for decades, we have been using marketing qualified leads, which no longer work. So you could see that in the illustration in the graph here, you could see that we are not talking about leads anymore in the revenues. We are talking about opportunities. And we are talking about, strong propensity to buy and through multiple members of the buying group. Now, think about it this way. In order for the opportunity to progress through this waterfall and finally culminate in a win, you have to start putting criteria of how and when one stage is crossed and the buyer moves to the next stage, right? And it is just not an individual. It is definitely a buying group. The second thing about this model is that we are reflecting that as marketing supports different types of opportunities. Now, at the top, we are noting the net new, right? We have the net new and the current customers. And then at the bottom, if you could see that there is a thin line which drives from the win stage back to the second layer, which has targeted opportunities. This line indicates that once we win a deal, they go back to the top as a retention opportunity and potentially upsell, cross-sell as well. Now, think about it this way. When we know that 77% of the revenues are coming from existing customers, we really cannot leave them out. We have to further identify additional opportunities we have in these accounts, and marketing can absolutely play a very critical role. So to summarize, let's bring back our anchoring visual. Each of these 5 elements enables us to activate this new way of generating demand opportunities. You can be aligned, business-wide focus on buying groups. This is a key point which I want to bring into perspective. The infrastructure and the processes which are in place to detect the signals, to know when different members of the buying group are trying to engage. Sometimes they can engage with your first party. Sometimes you will get signals from, external sources, which are probably second party or third party data sources. And so then coming to the point 3, the creation and activation of program plays. What kind of programs you would plan out? What kind of programs will help you to further direct different parts of the demand program which you are creating for the buying group, so that they can better navigate their journey. Then fourth is management of different opportunity types. We have talked about this, through the waterfall. We have talked about acquisition, we have talked about retention, we have talked about cross-sell, and recognizing that each of these are going to need a very different buyer journey, and it will have different associated criteria. Marketers have to be cognizant of this fact that, buyer needs are different in each of these opportunity types. They are different across the stages, of the customer journey. Accordingly, the messaging has to be refined. And so finally, the deployment of different marketing approaches, determining the right mix. How do you engage audiences effectively, but do so in a way that it allows to scale the business opportunities. Okay, moving on. My final observation, it becomes kind of obvious following the earlier statements we have made on future readiness, transformation, or changes around us, readapting to deliver the greater business value and unlocking the full potential of your marketing organization. How do you build a future ready? How do you build a high performance marketing organization? And that is going to be our point. But first, let's take a look at, what are some of the characteristics of a high performing marketing organization. High performing marketing teams have one thing in common. Let's look at the center, center of this, where we have audience centric. Most organizations which have great marketing organizations, at the heart of what they do is their desire, their quest to be audience centric, to give away the audience what they are really asking for, to deliver that value through the channels they seek. If the customer is asking for information online, offline, at an event, irrespective of whichever channel they are looking information for, and in the formats they need. Sometimes they might want to consume text-only content, video-only content, or raw outline information in whichever format, at whatever time which they are preferring, 24/7 availability. Now, and centered around all of this is what? There is one driving theme, that is customer centricity, how audience centric you are. And when you have audience centricity built into the DNA of the team, how does it manifest? It manifests when you have a team that is strategic, that understands how every action which you take rolls up into fulfilling a larger organization goal. It is not just that, you are doing a search engine optimization and you are just focused on that. You're just doing some design and you're just focused on that. It's not that. Understanding how every action of every individual within the marketing organization is rolling up to fulfill the bigger organizational goal. Focused, having the ability to really prioritize, drive business contribution in measurable ways. The KPIs are really, really important here. And then process driven, by ensuring that activities are integrated, they are really well planned, they are understood by everyone within the marketing organization, and organized and efficient. You can, bring this audience centricity into focus. And next is insightful. You have to use analytics to understand what the audience is asking for, to understand the audience overall, and to also benchmark performance, right? And then capable, having the right skill sets and competencies to fulfill the function, the role which they're, assigned to, and, enabled by the right technologies. And then measurable. This is a key element because of which we are not able to, marketing teams are not able to really showcase the value they bring to the table. Their contribution, marketing's contribution, has to be shown in plain numbers. And that must be done. Aligned internally within the team And also externally, they have a shared vision, right? The entire team understands the vision, they have a common understanding, and they follow the processes, and they have accountability for their shared success, because marketing teams will always have shared success. You will not have, this is a success by one component of the marketing organization. And finally, the ability to be agile, the ability to do rapid changes, creating great responses, bringing or building a culture of experimentation. I think that is something which is another characteristic of a very high performing marketing organization. But now that we have known that all of these levers have to be met for you to be audience centric and build a high performance organization, what is the secret to cracking the code? To build this, CMOs normally focus solely on the structure. This is how my team has to be structured, but that is just one of the components contributing to the performance. Marketing leaders must also view the marketing organization as an ecosystem. And so this is the Forrester's ecosystem model. It has several elements which interact. There is interconnection and interaction, of several elements that, that really dictate how the marketing organization performs. So in high performing B2B marketing organizations, the ecosystem revolves around, I would say, a very uniform organizational understanding of the target audience. I think that is always at the core, and it examines other essential elements and what are these other essential elements? Whatever are interconnected, whatever are part of the ecosystem. You have capabilities. How do you orchestrate? How do you make sure that you are accountable? How do you ingrain that in your culture? What kind of infrastructure, and what are the governance mechanisms which you have in place, right? So we will show you how to crack the code by taking you through the 8 C's of effective marketing organizational design in the next slide. So these are the 8 C's of effective marketing organizational design. The 8 C's are, it's a structured approach to the org design process. It ensures that decisions are made in the context of organizational growth objectives, and it is not myopic. It is not siloed, that marketing wants to do something on its own. It doesn't happen that way. It has to be aligned with the overall growth objectives of the organization, and along with key activities and deliverables that drive effective organizational initiatives. It also covers all the components of the marketing ecosystem, which we just talked about. So let's look at each of these components very quickly. So the first one is clarity. What is it that we are really trying to do? You cannot begin to design the optimal marketing organization until you really know what the organization is going to be expected to do, right? So once you have a clear objective, you can begin to identify the competencies, what are needed to meet those objectives. And from there, from the competencies, you can then move on to conceptualize. How will you get it done? What are the things, what are the essential functions, what are the workflows which will be required to build this high performance execution engine, right? And then you can compare the competency gap. What is the gap which I have in my existing team? What is it that I need? What is the work that needs to get done? And then start addressing capacity. You can augment your team structure. You can invest in training. You can hire very specialized agency for that. Then you think about addressing these gaps. And then how will you, once all of this is done, how will you fill this gap at what cost? Is it going to add on more cost? Is it going to save costs because I'm planning this approach? So all of these considerations, with all of that work done, now the only thing which you can begin to develop is roll out the actual org chart. So this is not the starting point of the org chart, is not the starting point of an efficient marketing org design. This comes towards the end of the exercise, right? Finally, the 8C is communicate. It is depicted here across the bottom, when you can see it at the bottom, that what are the important things to communicate to stakeholders. I believe that I did skip out the calibrate portion. I think you need to calibrate and assess the effectiveness of this, organizational change, because that is going to be really important to ensure that, your team is together and the team thinks together, the team gels well together, and that is how everyone is aligned in one direction towards achieving the business goals. So to summarize, what is the reward that B2B CMOs are seeking? It's a core mandate for a B2B CMO is to establish, a high-performing marketing organization, which not just helps to create, but also to sustain not just today's, but also future's business advantage. That's the brand which we are talking about, creating and sustaining a future business advantage. And like a bank vault where you put in all of your treasures, there is a gold mine of potential which is locked away in your marketing organization. You can unlock them through efficient org design, and it needs a systematic approach that considers corporate growth objectives for sure. It needs optimizing structure of the marketing organization, understanding their competencies, workflows. We talked about it all, right? And so once all of that is done, you seal it with communication, which is critical throughout this entire phase of the org design. And that will help you to achieve the results you set out to achieve. That brings us towards the end of our presentation. We have covered a lot of ground today. We talked about a lot, and I know you have different levels of planning readiness within your organizations. To summarize, while the economic picture continues to remain unpredictable, marketing executives must commit to decision making that focuses on the long term. Resist the short term thinking. Resist reactive cost-cutting measures, which can have adverse impact down the line. The key is to balance the budget across the programs which you are planning to run. It can be your reputation programs, it can be your demand programs, it can be your sales enablement programs, it can be your enrichment programs. So all of that. And the most critical ones to support are addressing changing buyer behaviors and programs that drive post-sale engagement systematically within the organization. So we covered a lot of ground today. If you have any further questions on any of the things which we discussed today, please feel free to reach out to the Grazity team, and I would be in touch with them to provide my responses to all of them. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you have an excellent event experience for the rest of the day.
Thank you for that amazing kickoff, Subhendu. I'd say we're off to a great start. I'd like to tell you that our subject matter experts are available in the lounge area and the booth. So please feel free to catch up with them for more information about our services and products. And you will also stand a chance to win an Amazon voucher. Let's join in the next keynote session titled Marketing 3.0 AI and ML to the Rescue. See you there.